And so, continuing on, rather than stopping right there, instead of turning the computer off, he keeps going. And so he sends a messenger, and he collects this woman, and there was no consent. There was no, it was a misuse of power for sure. There was no agency in this. The king was doing what kings do. She was led from the palace to the bed, and we know the rest of the story. And what we also know, if we continue on in this story, is we find that Bathsheba becomes pregnant, and she sends word to David, and these sins, these innocuous decisions, or these small decisions over and over again, began to wrap themselves, and they were going to begin to reveal themselves if he didn't take matters into his own hands. And that's what he does. It's likely at this point that David thought about this situation like all situations, maybe a battle time situation where they've been outflanked and we need to make some adjustments, and so we make some decisions and we adjust to the situation. And so he begins to make some decisions. And so he writes to the front lines and he gets Uriah back home. Surely he will enjoy R&R, rest and relaxation, as much as he has, and long for the loving embrace of his wife, right? Somebody say right. But this is not what Uriah the Hittite does. He's a man of integrity, and if I can't, he would go on to say, if my men aren't seeing their families, that I'm not going to see mine. And so he slept outside the palace with the servants, we are told. This obviously frustrated King David. His plans were not going according to his scheme. And so he designs a dinner for the next evening, invites him into his home, into the palace, and they have a marvelous dinner, lots of wine, imbibement, or whatever the word is. And Uriah is actually considered drunk at the end of this evening. Surely David is thinking to himself, this is going to be it. This is what's going to have him compromise his values. But he doesn't. He sleeps outside the palace with the servants. And this frustrates David to no end. So David writes a letter, we are told, to Uriah's commander. He tells in this letter Uriah's commander that I want you to take Uriah and I want you to place him, the next time you're in battle, find the hot spot, place Uriah in that pullback, and allow him to die in battle. And to make matters worse, ironic as it was, David hands this letter to Uriah. He's carrying his own death warrant to his own commander, who reads this, follows the orders, and he indeed dies in battle. At this point, perhaps David, we're not really told, felt like everything had been cleaned up. It's neat, it's tidy, no one's going to ask any questions. He marries Bathsheba. The timing was probably such that very few people would question what in the world had happened, or how it all happened. This was probably a honeymoon baby. Only a few people really knew what the king had done and what really had gone down. But what King David had forgotten and was not paying attention to was what God had seen all along the way. This is another interesting notion about sin. We are told in Scripture that sin is deceitful, it deceives us, and we are so deceived that we don't appreciate, we cannot see how it's deceiving us. We think that sin's manageable. Most of us. Unless you've gotten into a situation where you have bumped face to face into the reality, the fact of the matter, the truth of the matter, that we are no match for sin. And David thought that things had been buttoned up. And what he failed to appreciate was the whole time that God was watching all of this unfold. Here he is, an adulterer. Here he is, a liar.